They erased Earth in less than a second. Billions gone. The galaxy celebrated, thinking it was over. But 3 days later, a voice came back. Not from Earth, from everywhere. And that's when they realized they didn't kill humanity. They woke it up. They didn't come with warnings. No diplomatic channels. No final message. No chance to surrender. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels wrong. The kind that spreads slowly like something holding its breath. And then it happened. Not an explosion. Not a war. Not even a sound. Just a single pulse. A ripple of energy that moved faster than light. Cutting across space like reality itself had been sliced open. It touched Earth for less than a second. And when it passed, Earth was gone. No debris. No fragments. No burning atmosphere trailing into space. Nothing. Where an entire world once existed, it was only emptiness. Clean. Perfect. Terrifying. 8 billion lives erased so completely. It was as if they had never existed at all. No final transmissions. No distress calls. No time to understand what was happening. One moment, a living, breathing planet. The next, a void. Across the galaxy, sensors froze. Observatories went dark. Entire scientific networks collapsed under the impossibility of what they were seeing. Because this wasn't destruction. It was something far worse. It was removal, as if Earth had been taken out of existence itself. And for a moment, no one spoke, even among the oldest civilizations. Those who had seen stars collapse and galaxies burn. There was hesitation, because deep down, they all understood something had just happened, something that should not be possible. And then, the silence broke, not with fear, not with outrage, but with approval. The Galactic Council convened within hours. Thousands of species, ancient empires. Humanity had been warned. Humanity had been given a choice. And humanity had refused. So this was the consequence. Hours turned into days. The galaxy moved on. Trade routes reopened. Military patrols resumed. Diplomatic discussions continued. As if nothing had happened. As if an entire civilization hadn't just been erased. Because in a galaxy this vast, one world didn't matter. Not really. Not in the long run. That's what they told themselves. That's what they believed. But something wasn't right. It started small, subtle, easy to ignore. Long-range sensors began reporting inconsistencies. Not around Earth, but everywhere. Star positions slightly off. Coordinates drifting. Navigation systems requiring constant recalibration. At first, it was blamed on the weapon. Some kind of residual distortion. A side effect of whatever had been used to erase the planet. But the data didn't match. Because the anomalies weren't fading. They were spreading. Slowly. Quietly. Like ripples moving outward from a point that no longer existed. On the third day, a junior analyst in a remote observation station noticed something strange. A pattern, hidden beneath layers of corrupted data. At first, it looked like noise, random interference. But the more they filtered it, the clearer it became. A signal, weak, fragmented, but intentional. They forwarded it to their superiors, who dismissed it, then to a regional command center, who ignored it, until finally it reached the council, where, for reasons no one could later explain, it was allowed to run. And yet, that voice was real, clearer than any signal they had ever received, stronger than any transmission system known to the galaxy. And it wasn't coming from one place. It was coming from everywhere. Silence filled the chamber. Not the kind from before. Not the empty, comfortable silence of certainty. But something heavier. Something colder. The kind of silence that comes when reality stops making sense. One council member leaned forward. "This is impossible." Another shook their head slowly. "No, this is something else." And deep in the back of the chamber, one of the oldest beings present closed their eyes because they understood something the others did not. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't a mistake. And this wasn't over. Because if humanity was still speaking, then humanity was still alive. And if humanity was still alive, then what the Carthuan had destroyed was never Earth to begin with. And in that moment, For the first time in their long, dominant history, the rulers of the galaxy realized something they had never felt before. Not doubt, not concern, not even fear. Something far worse. They realized they had just attacked something they didn't understand. The chamber didn't move. Thousands of representatives from thousands of worlds sat frozen in place, staring at nothing. Not at each other, not at their instruments, but at the idea that had just shattered everything they believed. Humanity was still speaking, and not from a hidden ship, not from a surviving colony, from everywhere. You made a mistake. The words echoed again, this time not through speakers, but through systems themselves. Data streams twisted. Translation matrices rewrote their own code. Even species that required entirely different sensory input, light, sound, chemical pulses, all received the same message. Perfectly understood. Perfectly delivered. Impossible. Trace it. One council member demanded. 100 systems responded instantly. 1,000 scans launched across the galaxy. Signal triangulation, quantum resonance tracking, dimensional mapping. Every known method deployed at once. And every single one returned the same answer. Origin, unknown. No direction. No source. No point of emission. It wasn't coming from somewhere. It was already everywhere. But it was already too late. Those commands never reached their targets. Because something had already taken control. Screens flickered, then stabilized. But what they showed was not the council chamber. It was Earth. Alive. Bright. Untouched. Oceans shimmering under sunlight. Cities glowing with life. Clouds drifting across continents that should no longer exist. That's impossible, someone whispered. We confirmed the strike, another said. Total erasure. And yet, there it was. Not a reconstruction, not a simulation, but a real, living world. You saw what we allowed you to see. The voice cut through their disbelief like a blade. A ripple passed through the chamber. Not physical, but psychological. Because now, a new possibility had entered the equation. One far more terrifying than simple survival. Deception. For centuries, you observed us. Images began to shift. Human history. Wars. Inventions. Moments of unity. Moments of collapse. All playing across every surface. But you never understood us. The footage accelerated. Technology advancing faster than it should. Patterns forming beneath chaos. Structures hidden within progress. We were not evolving blindly. The view zoomed out, beyond Earth, beyond the solar system, revealing something the Council had never detected. A network. Invisible. Massive. Interconnected. Stretching far beyond a single star. We were preparing. The chamber erupted into motion. Now panic began. Because if this was true, then everything they had recorded about humanity was wrong. Every report, every analysis, every conclusion, flawed, incomplete, manipulated. Send a fleet, a Carthuan commander demanded. Verify the system. Destroy anything that remains. But before the order could even be transmitted, the human voice spoke again. You've already done that. The chamber froze. And in that moment, a transmission arrived. Priority override. Carthuan High Command. The feed opened automatically. A warship bridge. Lights flashing. Crew shouting in panic. We've lost navigation. Coordinates are shifting. We can't stabilize. The image distorted. Space outside the viewport twisted. Stars bending, stretching, collapsing into lines of light. This isn't normal space, someone yelled. Pull us out. We're trying. And then, nothing. The feed cut. Not abruptly. Not violently. Just gone. Silence returned. But now it was different. Heavier. Colder. Because this wasn't theory anymore. This wasn't speculation. This was happening. 7 fleets. Another transmission reported. All lost. No debris. No signals. No trace. The Carthuan commander stood slowly. That's not possible. But no one argued. Because deep down, they all knew the truth. It was possible. Because it had already happened. You were still thinking in terms of war. The human voice returned. And now, there was something new in it. Disappointment. You believe this is an attack. A pause. long enough for dread to spread. This is not an attack. Across the galaxy, sensors began lighting up. Not in one system, not in one region. Everywhere, simultaneously, ships reporting anomalies. Planets losing contact with orbiting stations. Entire sectors experiencing absence. Not destruction, absence. Like something had simply removed pieces of reality. Carefully, precisely, without violence, without resistance. The Council's defensive networks activated. Ancient weapons powered up. Shields capable of withstanding stellar collapse engaged. But nothing happened. No incoming fire. No visible enemy. No target. Because there was nothing to defend against. We are not where you think we are. The voice echoed again. We are not moving through space. The stars outside the chamber flickered. We are moving through something you cannot perceive. One of the oldest beings in the chamber finally spoke. A voice that had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. This isn't technology. It whispered. This is something else. And for the first time, no one disagreed. Because whatever humanity had become, it wasn't just advanced. It wasn't just powerful. It was operating on rules the galaxy did not understand. The final image appeared. Not of Earth, not of fleets, but of something far larger. A structure, impossible in scale, extending beyond visible space. Shifting like it wasn't fully inside reality. We left long before you arrived. The voice softened, almost reflective. You never found us. Pause. Because we were never there. And in that moment, the truth settled in. Cold, unavoidable, terrifying. Earth had not been destroyed. It had been a shadow, a mask, a decoy, and the real humanity had been watching, waiting, growing, beyond reach. The chamber lights dimmed. Systems failed. Control slipped further from their grasp. And across every mind in that room, one realization echoed louder than any alarm. They hadn't eliminated a threat. They had exposed themselves to something far worse. Because if humanity had hidden for this long, if they had allowed the galaxy to believe they were weak, primitive, contained, then this moment, this reveal, was not a reaction. It was a decision. And now, whatever came next, was already unstoppable. Fear doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it spreads quietly, like a shadow you don't notice, until it's already standing behind you. That's how it began. Not with explosions, not with declarations of war, but with absence. At the edge of the Carthuan Empire, a patrol fleet vanished. No signal, no damage report, no trace of debris, just gone. At first, it was dismissed. Navigation error, system malfunction, pilot failure. Excuses came easily, until it happened again, and again, and again. Within hours, entire battle groups disappeared. Hundreds of ships, thousands, gone without a single shot fired. Carthuan High Command tried to contain the information, but panic doesn't stay contained. It leaks into whispers, into rumors, into fear. This is not warfare, one strategist admitted. Then what is it? Another demanded. No one had an answer, because how do you fight something that doesn't attack you, yet still removes you from existence? Across the galaxy, similar reports began to surface. Trade vessels missing mid-route. Colonies losing contact with orbiting stations. Exploration teams never returning. Every disappearance identical. No warning. No struggle. No evidence. The Council activated emergency protocols. Ancient systems, untouched for millennia, came online. Defense grids powered up. Planetary shields engaged. Fleets mobilized. For the first time in ages, the galaxy prepared for war. But there was one problem. There was no enemy to fight. We need a target, a commander shouted. We need coordinates. But every scan returned nothing. No ships, no weapons, no detectable force. Only normal space. Calm, silent, empty. And that silence became unbearable. Then came the next message. No warning, no build-up, just a voice cutting through every system at once. You were still thinking like predators. The tone had changed. Less patient now, more direct. You believe power is measured by force. A pause, but you never asked what lies beyond force. Before anyone could respond, the stars shifted, not metaphorically, physically. Constellations bent, light warped, navigation systems collapsed instantly. Ships lost orientation. Pilots screamed as their instruments spun wildly. This isn't possible. We're drifting. No, we're not moving at all. Reality itself was changing. In one system, a fleet opened fire blindly. Energy weapons tore through empty space. Missiles launched without targets. Nothing connected, nothing hit, because there was nothing there. And then one ship disappeared. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone mid-sentence. We have visual on. Silence. The rest of the fleet froze. No one fired again. No one spoke. Because now, they understood. This wasn't random. This wasn't chaos. This was control. You wanted war. The human voice returned. Calm. Unshaken. So we showed you what war looks like to us. Across the galaxy, more systems went dark. Not destroyed. Just silent. Like lights being turned off one by one. The Council watched it happen in real time. Their maps, once full of color and activity, began to dim. Sector by sector. World by world. Fleet by fleet. One delegate whispered, "We're losing everything." Another replied, quietly, "No, we're being erased." And still, no enemy appeared. No fleet arrived. No weapon fired. Because humanity wasn't fighting in space. They were fighting on a level no one else could reach. For the first time in history, the galaxy faced something it could not comprehend. Not superior numbers, not stronger weapons, but a completely different understanding of existence itself. And slowly, terrifyingly, the truth became clear. This wasn't an invasion. This wasn't conquest. This was a demonstration. The truth didn't come all at once. It revealed itself piece by piece, like a puzzle no one wanted to solve. It began with a question, a simple one. If they're not in our space, then where are they? For cycles, the greatest minds in the galaxy had believed reality was fixed, stable, defined. You existed in space. You moved through time. That was it. That was everything. Humanity proved them wrong. We call it the shift. The voice echoed across the council chamber. Not proud, not arrogant, just factual, a transition between layers of existence. Visual data flooded the screens. Not images, but concepts, impossible geometries, overlapping dimensions, structures existing both inside and outside reality. You exist on one layer. Pause. We learn to move between them. Gasps filled the chamber, because now it made sense. The disappearances, the distortions, the impossibility of detection. Humanity wasn't invisible. They were simply not there. Earth had never been destroyed. It had shifted, moved out of reach, out of phase with the rest of the universe. You didn't erase our world. The voice continued. You revealed your intentions. And that changed everything. Because this wasn't retaliation. This wasn't revenge. This was judgment. You had one advantage over us. The voice softened. You were united. Images flashed. The council, empires working together, civilizations bound by shared rules. And you used that unity, pause, to destroy something you didn't understand. Now the tone shifted, colder, sharper, and that is why you lost it. Across the galaxy, alliances began to break, not through war, not through betrayal, but through removal. Leaders vanished. Command structures collapsed. Communication networks failed. Entire empires fell apart overnight, not because they were attacked, but because the systems holding them together were quietly taken away. This is not war. The voice repeated. This is correction. The Carthan Empire made one final attempt. A full-scale mobilization. Every remaining fleet, every weapon, every resource, thrown into one desperate strike. But before they could even reach their targets, space fractured, not exploded, not shattered, fractured, like glass under pressure. Ships froze mid-flight, weapons powered down. Time itself seemed to hesitate. And then, the entire armada disappeared. No survivors, no wreckage, no memory of where they had been. The Carthaginian Empire ceased to exist as a military power in a single moment. The galaxy watched in silence, because now there was no doubt. Humanity had already won. This was never about revenge. The words echoed softly, and somehow that made everything more terrifying. Because revenge is emotional. It's chaotic. It makes mistakes. This was precise, controlled, perfect. A surviving council member finally spoke. What do you want? No arrogance, no authority, just fear. A pause followed, long enough to make every being listening feel insignificant. We wanted to understand you. Confusion spread. That's it, someone whispered. You called yourselves advanced. The voice continued. You claimed to have moved beyond war. Images appeared. Peace treaties. Alliances. United systems. But when faced with something different, pause. You chose destruction. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. You failed your own test. Across the galaxy, something extraordinary began to happen. Planets reappeared. Not destroyed ones. Not ruined ones. Relocated ones. Entire populations returned. Safely. Intact. Unharmed. Fleets that had vanished came back. Disarmed. Disabled. But alive. This is your second chance. The voice said. Borders disappeared. Not violently, but meaninglessly, because control had already been removed. Weapons systems no longer responded. Military commands ignored. War became impossible. You cannot harm each other anymore. And just like that, conflict ended. Not through peace. Not through agreement. Through limitation. At first, there was resistance. Panic. Anger. Attempts to regain control. All failed. Effortlessly. Because humanity wasn't stronger in battle. They were beyond battle. You are not being conquered. The voice said one final time. You are being guided. And slowly, reluctantly, the galaxy began to change. Time didn't stop. It never does. Even after something impossible happens. Even after reality itself is rewritten. Time keeps moving forward. At first, the galaxy didn't know how to exist without war. It sounds strange, but for millions of years, conflict had been constant. Not always open war, not always destruction, but always there. Tension, competition, fear. The idea that someone, somewhere, was always stronger, always watching, always ready to take more. And then suddenly, that was gone. No fleets clashing at the edges of systems. No territorial disputes escalating into violence. No desperate signals from worlds under attack. Just silence. But not the kind of silence that comes after destruction. Not the empty, cold silence of loss. This was different. This silence felt stable. Safe. At first, civilizations didn't trust it. How could they? Peace had never lasted before. There was always a breaking point. Always someone who wanted more. So they tested it. Quietly. Carefully. A small border violation here. A hidden weapons activation there. A secret attempt to rebuild military command. Every time, the same result. Nothing. Weapons failed before they could fire. Ships refused to move into attack formation. Command systems simply didn't respond. Not violently stopped. Not destroyed. Just denied. It became clear very quickly. War was no longer an option. Not because of treaties. Not because of fear. But because it was no longer possible. And that realization changed everything. Without conflict, civilizations began to shift. Slowly at first, then faster. Resources once used for war were redirected. Energy systems improved. Medical technologies advanced. Exploration missions expanded beyond known space. Worlds that had once struggled just to survive began to thrive. And something unexpected happened. Something no one had planned. Trust began to grow. Not forced, not controlled, but real. Because for the first time, there was no advantage to betrayal. No reward for violence. No power in destruction. And over time, the galaxy became something it had never been before. United, not under one empire, not under one rule, but under one truth, that they were no longer alone, and they were no longer in control. The Galactic Council still existed, but it wasn't what it used to be. Once, it had been a symbol of authority, power, control. Now, it was something quieter, a place for discussion, for learning, for remembering. Because no one there had forgotten. They remembered the day Earth disappeared, the day they believed they had ended a threat, the day they allowed fear to justify destruction. And most of all, they remembered what came after. The voice, calm, unshaken, unstoppable. You made a mistake. That sentence had never truly left them. It lingered, in every decision, in every conversation. A reminder of what happens when power is used without understanding. New civilizations eventually joined the Council. Species that had never known war. Worlds that grew up in this new version of the galaxy. And sometimes, they would ask questions. Simple ones. Curious ones. Who enforces the peace? Who protects the balance? Who makes the final decisions? The older members would exchange quiet looks, because the answer was always the same. No one. And yet, that wasn't entirely true, because deep down, everyone knew there was something out there, not watching in a controlling way, not ruling, not interfering without reason, but present, always present, a silent guardian. Humanity. They were never seen, not directly, not anymore. No fleets, no representatives, no visible structures. But their influence was everywhere, in the way systems stabilized before collapse, in the way conflicts dissolved before they could begin, in the way reality itself seemed to resist chaos. It was subtle, almost invisible, but undeniable, and far beyond the reach of any known civilization. In a place that didn't exist on any map, humanity remained, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as something far more powerful. Observers. They watched the galaxy grow, watched civilizations rise and learn, watched mistakes and prevented them before they could spread. Not out of dominance, not out of control, but out of responsibility. Because they had seen what the galaxy could become. They had seen the consequences of unchecked power, of fear-driven decisions, of destruction without understanding. And they had chosen something different. Not revenge, not domination, balance. And in quiet moments, when the stars seemed still, when the galaxy felt at peace, a thought would sometimes surface across different worlds, different species, different minds. What if things had gone differently? What if the Council had chosen patience instead of fear? What if the Carthuan had chosen restraint instead of destruction? What if Earth had never been attacked? Would humanity have stayed hidden? Would they have revealed themselves peacefully? Would the galaxy have evolved on its own? No one knew, because that version of reality no longer existed. There was only this one now. A galaxy without war. A galaxy without conquest. A galaxy shaped by a single moment, a single decision, and its consequence. Because in the end, humanity never wanted to rule. They never wanted control. They never wanted to stand above everyone else. But when they were forced to choose between survival and silence, they chose to become something more, something the galaxy could never ignore again. And across the endless stars, one message remained. Not spoken with anger, not delivered with pride, but carried quietly through the fabric of reality itself. A reminder, a warning, a truth. You attacked Earth. Now the galaxy answers to us.